Welcome back to Asperger Insights. We are now going to talk about the second most important statement about the autism spectrum. But before we do that, last week I talked about I think, therefore you should know. And the week before that was whatever happens first always has to happen. And both of those elements play into this, the second most important statement about the autism spectrum, which I won't lead into having a long story today. I'll get right to the statement, and that is we can be logical in an emotional world. Now, what that means is oftentimes we're going to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. A lot of us on the autism spectrum, we are certified experts at doing that, and I could probably give you 8 hours of stories, which first couple hours might be entertaining. After that, might just get downright boring. Maybe. But anyway, one of the big stories of my life, I had a girlfriend for many years in the early 2000s. We bowled on the same bowling team, and one Monday evening, she came in with an outfit that was different. I can describe it one of a couple ways. She was trying to look like this walking tent hybrid structure thingy, or she was auditioning for some Star Wars audition, a some weird alien from some planet nobody's ever heard of. It was that far out there, and I've never seen anything like it since, but on that night, other people looked at her oddly, but when I saw her come in, I looked at her and I said, what is that? Now, there was no anger in my words. There was no malice. It was a really innocent question. I just wanted to know what planet her clothes were from. That's all. Well, she didn't take too kindly to that, and I had no idea. A lot of us on the autism spectrum, we aren't going to pick up on facial expressions. We're not going to know if you're happy, sad, mad, bored, or if we have offended you. Well, the 10-minute practice period before league came and went, and she didn't have her bowling shoes on yet, and I, ever being the rule stickler, what that means is when it's your turn to bowl, you best be bowling. It became her turn to bowl. She didn't have her bowling shoes, so I turned to her politely. And again, she has given me every social sign in the world that she is expecting an apology. And I say, you're up. And that made her more mad, and she didn't talk to me for a couple weeks thereafter. At that point in time, I was socially blind. And in my presentations, I have this great concept which I describe what happened. And I'll show you this. So let's come over here and I'll show you. So, once again, the second most important statement is we on the autism spectrum can be logical in an emotional world. Now, what that means is that oftentimes we aren't going to understand the social rules of what's going on. And I can use this game of Monopoly as an example, which I gotta say, I love Monopoly. I have almost my entire life, and when I was 5, there was only one thing I wanted for Christmas, and that was Monopoly. I got it that night, and next day the whole family played. I had the rules memorized. I beat everybody, including my dad, and he hasn't played Monopoly since. He's been Monopoly free since 1988. Somehow I'm the only one in my family that loves games. I have no idea how that happened, but I have to give a slight public service announcement right now because there are some of you out there that play Monopoly with house rules. Maybe a free parking jackpot, maybe double the salary for lighting on go, and if you are one of those types, the only thing I really know what to say is shame on you. The rules are printed. They're called the official rules of Monopoly. They come free in every box. And if you lose them, you can look them up on the internet. Please read them, play by them, and thank you. Now, there is a reason why I gave you that public service announcement, and it is this. If everybody in the entire world plays Monopoly with the official rules, no matter where you go in the world or what language you're playing in, the rules are going to be the same. Now, if you're like me and from America, if I were to go to Latvia or Italy or Spain, odds are I'm not going to be able to pronounce the properties. However, the rules are going to be the same, the colors are going to be the same, the dollar amounts are going to be the same, and the chance and community chess cards, they too are going to be the same. I can be 7,000 miles away from home playing the same game. And yet, if you start throwing in house rules, things get a little confusing. And the way I describe it is by this board game example. If playing a game were a metaphor for what it could be like socializing on the autism spectrum, let's think of it this way. Let's say we rolled a 9 and we landed directly on Boardwalk, where there just happens to be let's say 6 hotels on Boardwalk and a smidgen of houses, which that's way against the rules, by the way. But Not only that, there's a king on boardwalk being checked by the knight on community chest, and not only that, but you've landed on a triple word space, so I hope you have some good letters to play off the word luxury tax because, well, you could be in for a big points payday. Huh? What game is going on there? Is it Scrabble? Is it Monopoly? Or is it chess? What is going on? And oftentimes, socially, for us on the autism spectrum, that's what we are left wondering after the fact. Because the rules 1 minute are this, the rules are that, and then we're just left wondering, huh? Now, this next story I'm going to give you is perhaps, I think, one of the best stories that is an example of just how fast things can be going all fine to things just getting completely complicated and wrong so fast. And for that, we're going to have to go outside. So for this example, and I gotta say, in this example, I give this story to every single presentation I give. It doesn't matter if it's high school students, doctors, teachers, third graders, everybody gets this story. Here in St. Louis, I'm an instructor at the Police Academy for the Crisis Intervention Team Training on Autism, and I learned this story from an officer. This story happened 3 years ago, and an 18-year-old with Asperger's got pulled over. Officer came up to the window and tapped on it. Well, nonverbal social cues can go 36.5 miles over our head. We may not know what it means. So, whereas most people are going to understand if the officer taps on the window, for a person on the autism spectrum, that may mean somebody's tapping on glass for some unbeknownst reason. So the person with Asperger's looked up at the officer and looked forward. That made the officer none too happy, so the officer pounds the glass harder. Person with Asperger's gets a little annoyed, looks at the officer and goes, "What?" Well, that makes the officer none too happy, so he pounds the glass harder and he says, "Sir, roll down your window, now." Person does so and very calmly looks at the officer and goes, "Oh, why didn't you say so in the first place?" Story goes downhill from there. The officer then asks the unfortunate question of, "Sir, can I see your license?" Well, the person with Asperger's looked at the officer and said, "No." Then, in the most stern voice possible, the officer asked, "Sir, can I see your license now?" Person with Asperger's thought longer and harder about it, trying to figure out what type of trick question it was, and he laughed when he said, "No, you still can't see my license." Well, he was immediately arrested for disobeying the orders of an officer and obstructing a peace officer's duty, taken to the station where, thank goodness, the officers there had autism training. They were able to read between the lines. They were able to realize that he wasn't intentionally trying to be the most obstinate, defiant, non-compliant individual in the whole wide world, or any of those other really cool long words. Bottom line, he wasn't intentionally trying to make the officer's life miserable, so no charges were filed. Well, his mom, per protocol, still had to come to the station to pick her son up, and she's in tears, and she says, "Son, why didn't you help the officer?" The 18-year-old was just as confused then as he was at the beginning of everything, and he said, "But, Mom, I was trying to help the officer. He kept asking if he could see my license." How could he? It was in my wallet. You see, what happened there is the officer asked, "Can I see your license?" We can have an absolute literal interpretation of questions, just like misunderstanding the rules of the game. Think about it. Can I see your license? If you take it absolutely literally, even if asked from the most authoritative of authoritative figures, that is a yes or no question. There is nothing in that sentence that implies that I need to get my wallet out, I need to open up, I need to find my license, and I need to hand it to you. That's a 5-step process that is only implied. And for us on the autism spectrum, we may not understand the implications of what is expected of us, and that's why being logical in an emotional world is the second most important statement about autism. Now, next week, we finally get to number 1. And for that, we will travel all the way to Las Vegas for that story. But for that story, we're going to have to rethink everything we've learned the past 4 weeks. Until then, I invite you to follow my channel once more. Follow me on Facebook. Until then, thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you in Vegas next week.